Gary, thank you very much and welcome to the session. You're in for a treat. We have an opportunity to have a chat with one of Canada's most visionary business leaders, leading one of Canada's most outstanding and successful international companies. Linda, when you look at Linamar, your range goes right around the world. You have 60 manufacturing centers. I think the figure is 8 R&D facilities around the world in 17 different countries. Probably nobody in the room is better positioned to talk about where we see things going over the course of the next year in the global economy and the Canadian economy. Are you optimistic? Are you investing? Where do you see things headed?
I mean, we're definitely investing because we have a lot of opportunities that we see out there, a lot of new business that we're launching. So we're absolutely investing. My outlook economically is probably a little uncertain, to be honest. I mean, there's so many different factors at play right now. The tariffs that continue to take their toll on American businesses, which is impacting, is starting to impact that economy, and I think will impact more so. Other political pressures are creating issues as well. So it's a bit of a tenuous time. And frankly, in our industry, I mean, our business is split into 3 parts. The biggest is our auto parts business, which is about 2/3 of our overall. And then 1/3 is split between our access equipment business, Skyjack, where we make scissor lifts and boom lifts, and our harvesting equipment company, MacDon, where we make combine headers. So all 3 of those businesses are actually under pressure right now. All 3 of those markets are actually down. In fact, the North American automotive market, we are in the 3rd year of a decline. So we're already sort of well into it. So in a way, that's a positive, because typically down cycles in North America in the auto industry last around 4 years, sometimes 5. So, we're already 3 years into it. So, on the positive side, we could be coming back out pretty soon. So that's a plus. And to me, the key is win enough business to be offsetting those declines. And we've seen an enormous amount of opportunity in new business to allow us to do that.
So that even when you're seeing a decline in the sector, you're continuing to invest, continuing to innovate.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have a very long-term focus. I need to look beyond what's happening this year or even next year. So, if we have new business that we're winning, we are investing. I mean, we've actually invested more in Canada in the last year than we have ever in our history in terms of new capital for new programs. And we continue to invest heavily in R&D as well, because that's where the products come from for the future. It's where process development comes from, and material development, and everything we need to make ourselves competitive to continue to win business. So you can't stop investing.
We hear so many stories about disinvestment from Canada, particularly in the manufacturing sector, yet you're going in the other direction. What do you see as the future for manufacturing in Canada, and particularly of the automotive sector in Canada? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's very, very positive. I mean, from my perspective, as I say, we're growing our automotive parts business, and other folks in our sector are doing the same. What we are seeing is a decline in OEM production volume, so the automakers, which frankly doesn't really affect us, because virtually everything that we make ships south of the border anyhow for the North American industry. So it's not impacting our business, but I think it's not good for Canada. I mean, it's not good for our overall automotive industry to be losing that production. And I think the way that we fix that, frankly, the biggest thing that we should be doing is being more proactive about going out there and trying to sell Canada as a place to manufacture vehicles. I mean, those companies aren't going to come to us and say, hey, I was thinking about setting up an automotive plant. How about doing it in Canada? We're more reactive than proactive, and I think that we should be more proactive because we've got a great story to sell. I mean, our Canadian plants are our most productive globally. We have 23 plants in Canada out of our 61 total, and they are our most productive plants in the world. So I know we've got great productivity here. I know we're very competitive. We're winning hundreds of millions of dollars of new business. So that's not an issue. What we need to do is be more proactive about attracting more people here.
So what you've done is to continue to innovate throughout all of this period. Let's turn to the issue of innovation for a minute. What has been your strategy? How do you stay ahead of the curve? This is an industry which is evolving dramatically. How do you stay ahead of that?
Yeah, I think really three things. I think first of all, you need to have a multifaceted approach because innovation is made up of a lot of different things. I mean, there's product innovation, process innovation, material development. We're working on all of those things, developing partnerships with technology companies who have developed something interesting but don't have the manufacturing ability or the contact to market to bring it to market. So partnering with companies like that to find new technologies that maybe it's not something we've developed, but it's something somebody else has developed. And I mean, the whole area of artificial intelligence and machine learning, there's enormous opportunity for driving innovation and efficiencies in our operations that we're working on. So number one, a multifaceted approach, both internal and external, I think is really important. Number two, I think making everybody in your company think that they own innovation and they own improvement. So we have a goal of 6 implemented ideas, not just ideas, but implemented ideas per person per year. What that means is last year we implemented almost 170,000 ideas. I mean, some of them are small, but some of them are bigger. And I think what's great about that is, number one, you just create this culture of innovation that everybody feels like it's my job to do that, and I think that's really important. But I think it also creates a culture that is used to change, because when you implement 170,000 ideas, things are changing every single day, and I think that's really healthy as well, to have that environment of change. And then the last piece, I think, is just so important, is to look at the full sort of life cycle when you're looking at innovation, or for that matter, when you're looking at strategy of what you're going to do as a business. And I think that we as businesses tend to look at a little slice of a product cycle and make decisions around that. And I'm going to give you a great example. There was a study that was done in Germany just this year, I think it was released, that compared the lifetime emissions of 3 different vehicles, a Tesla Model 3, a Mercedes 220 diesel, and a Mercedes C-Class LNG. And it's probably going to, well, maybe it'll surprise you, it didn't surprise me, to find out that the worst in lifetime emissions was the Tesla Model S. And the reason, and this was based on a study in Germany. Okay, so it's based on Germany's electricity makeup, which is about 40 to 45% fossil fuels, and the enormous emissions that are involved in building a large battery pack. So if you look at the chart on the screen, you can see over on the far right how each stack up. So building the car, all about the same. Drive cycle, the electric vehicles, a little bit better than the diesel, not a lot, that's the gray bar, because again, that electricity does come from somewhere, it does have emissions associated with it, and then the big blue bar is the building of the battery pack, like enormously emittive. And what I find sort of a challenge, and that's why I try and, when I'm out talking about these things, show some of this data, is people are so focused on one little slice of a full product cycle that they forget about a lifetime picture. And this is in Germany, where fossil fuels are 40 to 45% of the overall makeup. In the U.S. and China, it's 2/3, well, 60 to 65%. So the picture would actually be much worse for the electric vehicle in those regions. And there's no expectation for, in China, who's the biggest push on electric vehicles today, there's no expectation in China for that. They are putting more renewables on board, but they're still not going to be under that 40 to 45% even by 2050, according to these predictions. So, to me, understanding that full life cycle is really critical in making the right decisions and making the right sort of bet on the future. Now, I don't think we should make bets on the future. I think we should try and develop strategies that are flexible in the sense that you could be successful in a variety of futures. But we need to understand this data to make good decisions. And I feel like these facts are not well understood. That was a really long answer to your
It was a good answer. You covered a lot of territory. You mentioned in the course of your comment culture of innovation. And let's pursue that a bit if we can. I was struck in the previous presentation prior to the break, the picture of the iceberg with strategy on the top, but down below the water level was the 90%, which was the culture within the organization. How does Linamar develop a culture of innovation? And is this something that other companies can copy? Is it replicable?
Yeah, I 100% agree that the culture of your company is absolutely critical, and I actually think that the culture that we have at Linamar is massively important in our success and how we've been successful. I mean, we're a very entrepreneurial company. We're constantly looking for opportunities, top line and bottom line. Like I chased Michael Thompson out of the room to try and sell him Skyjacks for the city of Toronto. But it's not just me, it's everyone in our company who thinks that way, and total devotion to cost reduction and, the kind of leaders that we're looking for. So I think number one, to have a culture that's well embedded, you need to be able to articulate it. So obviously you need to talk about it. But to Roy's point, you can't just put those words up on a wall and then expect that somehow people are going to behave that way. I mean, it needs to affect how you hire people. It needs to affect how you reward people, from a compensation perspective, how you reward them from a promotion perspective. So, like when we look at performance, we weight it half on behavior in terms of adherence to our core values and the leadership behaviors that we're looking for, and half to sort of traditional performance of did you meet the objectives that were laid out for you last year, and are you meeting sort of broad-based company metrics in terms of performance. It's weighted equally. And I think that goes a long way also to instilling the culture. So I think the bottom line is you need to really instill it. You need to kind of build it into the DNA of how you work, how you compensate, promote, et cetera, and the decisions that you make every day, and give people tools that actually link back to that culture if you want it to be well ingrained.
You have suppliers, you have customers, you have competitors. If you use Linamar as the benchmark, how does Canadian business, particularly the manufacturing sector, measure up in terms of innovation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it measures up fantastic, and this is actually another small beef of mine, which is that I think that we are not doing a good job of measuring R&D expenditure in Canada. So we use as our measure of R&D expenditure SHRED, right? So how much people are claiming and getting approved in SHRED. But as you can see on this chart, when I look at what our traditional R&D costs are, so this is a little snapshot of one of our companies, MacDon, and the amount of money that they're spending on traditional R&D. I mean, they've got over 100 engineers, they've got hundreds of patents, they're constantly innovating their product to bring new technologies to the table and improve existing ones. And out of that total R&D budget, which is the blue bar, somewhere as low as 15%, and on average somewhere around 35–38% of that R&D spend is actually SHRED acceptable, like is approved as SHRED. Now, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't have a problem that only 38% is considered applicable for SHRED. Because SHRED is supposed to be true scientific discovery and brand new science. So the benchmark, the hurdle is high to get something approved through SHRED. I don't have a problem that I'm only getting 38%. I think it's actually a fantastic program that we get a lot of funding out of to support our innovation. My problem is it only represents a third to at most half of our total R&D spend. And we're out telling the rest of the world that Canada doesn't spend enough on R&D, that we're way behind the rest of the world, when that's not how the rest of the world measures it. We're measuring an apple, they're measuring an orange, and we're telling the world that we're bad. And I find that just so frustrating. And while I'm on a roll here, I also get really frustrated when we talk about ourselves being non-productive. As I mentioned a minute ago, our Canadian plants are our most productive in the world. Here is our productivity, sales per employee of our Canadian facilities over the last 8, 9, 10 years. There is a solid trend line up there. I mean, it's a significant improvement in terms of productivity. I know my plants are productive because we're winning hundreds of millions of dollars of business. So I get really frustrated when we're also told that we're unproductive. And I also think it doesn't achieve anything. I don't think it motivates to be told that you're unproductive and you don't spend enough money. That doesn't make existing businesses feel like, oh, I better do some of that. And it certainly doesn't attract other business to come here. So I think we need to stop doing that and start talking about, case studies of companies that are doing a great job of productivity and are doing exciting, innovating things in terms of R&D.
Now, ignoring your warning to stop talking about this, let me pursue it. A knock that's made against Canadian businesses, that we underinvest in R&D. You've heard that, you've addressed that. We also hear that we underinvest in machinery and equipment, that the average age of equipment in Canadian factories is older than in our competitors, and that we underinvest in upskilling the skills of our workforce.
Again,
is that off base as well?
Fully disagree. I fully disagree, certainly from our perspective. And again, I happen to have a chart here on our spending just in Canada over the last 10 years. And again, you can see a solid trend line up. And that last year, we spent more than we ever have in our history in our Canadian facilities. So I can tell you with certainty that that's not true for Linamar's facilities. And I know it's not true for a lot of other businesses as well that are investing and are thriving in their Canadian locations.
Let's talk about skills for a minute. You won't remember it, but the first time we met was about 20 years ago at a conference on skills. And I recall you talking about how Linamar reached out in the Wellington County school system to encourage high school students to come in and to spend some time in the firm to see what manufacturing was all about and see whether this might be attractive to them as a career. What about the investment in skills? What is the role of government? What's the role of business in that?
Yeah, I think that it's a joint role, first of all. I think that business needs to play a role at the same time as government. I think that we're headed in the right direction, that being to try to get more skilled trades, for instance, where businesses, to maintain that kind of productivity and competitiveness, we need desperately skilled technical people. And as we continue to implement new innovations and automate more on the shop floor, we need less and less unskilled people and more skilled people with, and technically oriented people to manage that very different operation. So I think we need to be encouraging more people into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, as well as trades. And I think that our governments understand that. So I'm seeing more in the way of investments towards those areas, which I think is a real positive. And I think we just need to do more of that. I think we also need to do more experiential learning, so work-integrated learning, co-op, internships, call them what you like. But I think that that our best employees are ones that we've had the opportunity to work with through their school, while they're in school, whether that be in high school or college or university. I think that it's incredibly valuable. And in fact, I'd like to see every post-secondary program, both college and university in Canada, incorporate some type of work-integrated learning.
It's an excellent idea, and it's absolutely critical. Tell me what you're finding in terms of first-time intake of workers coming into Linamar. The concern I hear from employers across the country, no matter where we are, is the toughest challenge they have in moving their company to the next level is to attract and to hold people with the skills they need. Are you finding that in terms of people leaving our educational system, applying for work at Linamar, that they're coming with basic survival skills, numeracy, literacy, communications, the ability to work in a team, or is this something that you have to attempt to instill in them?
It is definitely something that we are working to upskill people. So we do some basic sort of math and literacy training for employees that are coming in that haven't gotten what they needed to out of our education system. We also offer, it's called School Within a Factory, which is offering people who didn't get a chance to finish their high school education for whatever reason, the opportunity to get their high school diploma on site. So it's not during work hours, it's after work hours, but we provide the venue and work with the local school board to bring teachers on board to offer that to our employees. So, and then on the skilled side, there's a whole raft of things we're doing, whether it be around trades or STEM, more broadly, or women specifically in both of those areas, because although we're seeing great improvements in terms of representation, I think there's more work that can be done to get more women into trades and into STEM. So there's a whole series of things that we're doing in that regard to create our own workforce, the workforce that we need. So again, I can't wait for government to do it for me. I need to be proactive and make the investment to develop the people that we need.
Final question. We have a federal election coming up. When you look, I'm not going to ask you.
You're not going to ask me to predict,
No,
are
I'm not
you?
going to ask you to predict or to advise on how to vote. But when you look at the political parties, what are you looking for from them in terms of ensuring Canada's innovative capacity for the future? What should the politicians be talking about?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I would say, number one, the tax rate. Corporate and personal income taxes, I think we need to address. They're not competitive anymore. They used to be competitive. We are no longer competitive with the U.S., certainly on the corporate side, and we need to change that. So I think that needs to be a topic that is addressed. I think that we need to address regulatory barriers. In some industries, it's much much worse than others. In manufacturing, it's not too bad. But in the mining, for instance, I mean, it's insane. Like we can't do anything in terms of mining and oil and gas, whether it's new exploration or getting a pipeline put in place. Like we've got to fix that. That is so critical. I mean, we can't tie up through regulatory burden our ability to invest and attract investment and attract talent. And that's the last piece I would say is to again focus on the talent side. What can we be doing to get the right talent to us, both within our education system and also from an immigration perspective, because we can revamp the school systems and do a lot to change what we're teaching and how we're teaching it, but there's going to be a gap there that needs to be filled through immigration. So how we can attract more people to Canada, being proactive at going out and trying to bring them here, because we do desperately need people at every skill level. I think attracting more people to our country and improving what we're doing on immigration, as in more, not less, is really critical. And I'll just tell a real quick story, I know we're out of time, about immigration. So my father came to this country in 1957, penniless. When he arrived on our borders, he was given landed immigrant status on the spot. He was a skilled tradesman, didn't speak English or French, but was given landed immigrant status on the spot and $5. So I guess that was the deal back in the day when you got your when you arrived here and got your landed immigrant status, you got $5, which by the way was the only $5 he had. Sorry, he has more now. But last year, Linamar and our employees in Canada paid taxes to Canada of more than $400 million. Okay? not a bad return on investment for $5. So that's my immigration story and why we should support immigration in this country.
And absolutely. If we could clone your family, we would be doing very, very well. Linda, thank you so much. Let's hope the politicians are listening. Now, Gary is about to give me the hook, so I'll have to wrap it up, but let me simply say how much I appreciate both your being with us today and the incredible work that you and Linamar do. You really are setting the pace for Canadian business. The optimism that you have about the future of this country and your sense of urgency as well at getting moving and getting things done right is, I think, exactly the right message. So thank you so much for being with us.
It's my pleasure.